Welcome to The Bottom Line, where we examine trending and important news. The Privileges Committee sat for several months and deliberated a motion moved by Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, Gil Teixeira, that 8 opposition MPs be sanctioned for unparliamentary and contemptuous conduct and for attempting to interfere with the orderly conduct of the National Assembly. The complaints related to the behavior of opposition MPs on December 29, 2021. The event occurred on the night the Natural Resources Fund Bill was debated and passed. Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlall recapped the event of that dreadful evening when the opposition refused the many directions of the Speaker to take their seats. They stood in their seats and chanted, shouted, and blew whistles, and when this did not achieve the objective of preventing the bill from being debated, they then left their seats and descended into the rotunda of the National Assembly.
The rotunda is that sacred space which separates the government side from the opposition side, and in any parliament, that space is sacrosanct and ought not to be entered into by any parliamentarian except with permission from the Speaker of the National Assembly. Despite the several pleas by the Speaker of the National Assembly, they descended into that sacred place and space, and they continued their raucous, riotous, disorderly, and vulgar behavior and conduct, shouting at the top of their voices, marching, dancing, blowing whistles, and physically attempting to intimidate the Minister of Finance from speaking, intimidate him from speaking. They even were walking up to him and shouting into his face as he was attempting to make his presentation. When they did not succeed in those actions, they then rushed over, a few of them, rushed over to the mace, grabbed the mace, and ran out of the National Assembly with it, breaking it in the process and assaulting members of staff of the National Assembly in the process. They went outside of the National Assembly with the mace, dragging one particular employee of the National Assembly, whom they insulted and labeled a house slave because he was attempting to protect the mace from being broken and wrenched away by them. The mace in the process was broken. One of them then went into the control room of the National Assembly and pulled out wires from the loudspeaker system, preventing the loudspeaker and the microphone recording system from working for the rest of that evening.
The AG added that this behavior will never and must not be countenanced in a democratic institution nor in any democratic society. The government side of the House had no choice but to uphold the integrity of the National Assembly. The AG also commented on articles featured in some sections of the print media alleging that the suspended opposition members of Parliament did not get a fair opportunity to be heard. This, the AG said, is not so.
They were written to and they were given an opportunity to show cause in writing. And I believe they did. Of course, they professed their innocence. We have the proceedings, as you all know, were streamed live, and most of you or many of you may have seen it yourself. But we have a flash drive that has the proceedings unedited, and it is also stored on the Parliament's website for those who wish to go into the archives to view it either another time or for the first time. And you will see the type of conduct that was displayed on the 29th of December 2021.
The Privileges Committee, after deliberating on many occasions, concluded that the parliamentarians were guilty. guilty of breach of privileges and contempt of Parliament, and imposed a penalty of suspension depending on the gravity of the individual's conduct. That report was adopted by the National Assembly.
The sanctions are then fortified and are imposed, and those who are imposed with that sentence, for want of a better word, must carry out that sentence. That is the law of the Parliament. So that was done, and they are now suspended from 4 sittings and 8 sittings. Now, suspension carries with it certain consequences. They are not to be paid. So how many months that 4 sitting lasts, they will not. Those 4 sittings last, they will not be paid. For how many months the 8 sittings last, they will not be paid. They will also not participate in any committee business. They will not participate in any business of the National Assembly during the period of that suspension. So all the trips that they wanted to go on overseas and all the other benefits that would have accrued to them as parliamentarians are also forfeited during the period of the suspension. And that is what happens when you don't want to obey the law and you don't want to accept procedures.
Our democracy is working and it is strong, despite efforts made to denigrate it, to undermine it, and to subvert it. Democracy has prevailed. Conduct of this type would not be tolerated in any parliament in the British Commonwealth whose tradition Guyana is a part of. A high-level team representing the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the Caribbean met with Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandalal at his office in Carmichael Street, Georgetown. The delegation included the head of the FBI for the Caribbean region, his deputy, and a representative of the U.S. State Department. During the meeting, the AG reiterated a complaint that the government of Guyana has already made on more than one occasion to several important organs within the U.S. government structure, as well as to many law enforcement agencies within the U.S. security system. That is, the use of cyberspace and social platforms by persons operating in the United States to regularly attempt to incite racial hostilities, racist antagonism, excite persons to commit terroristic acts and acts of domestic terrorism, and encourage persons to take up arms against the law enforcement agencies of Guyana.
The names of those persons were provided and actions were requested and actions were promised. The law and the legal machinery may, in some people's view, work slowly. But I can assure you that it is working. The arms of the law are very long, and they reach across oceans and they reach across jurisdictions. Those who take pleasure in mocking the law, those who take pleasure in trampling upon the law, have learnt bitterly in the past, and those who are doing it now will also learn bitterly in the near future. The main item on the agenda was extradition. Extradition both from the US and to the US. And I will leave it there for the time being.
Minister of Labour Joseph Hamilton, while on the Freddie Gildari show, reflected on the 2020 regional and general elections. The minister responded to questions by co-host and political analyst Freddie Kissoon about his role in the Guyana's 2020 election, which Kissoon described as surreal and madness.
It had to be madness because they were attempting to rig elections with the cameras rolling. You know, and I recall a Commonwealth observer saying that to me. He said 35 years he's doing observation elections, and he has never seen anything like this. He said the closest, I think, is Tunisia, some of them North African country, or Algeria, some of these folks. He said that here the cameras are rolling, the TVs are on, and the people are attempting to rig elections. But I was talking to Gildari earlier, and I was making this point, that during Mr. Granger's tenure of 5 years, he never surprised me. I predicted how Mr. Granger would govern in 2011. And that is the reason why, you know, even though I was telling Gildari that former colleagues of the PNC came to me to support Granger, I told him that will not happen. I will not support David Granger because I know how this would have ended. When a man says to me, Freddie, look, my hero is Forbes Barnum. He didn't say Mandela, he didn't say Mahatma Gandhi, he didn't say Martin Luther King. What else do you want? That is your evidence of how the man will govern. That is your evidence of philosophically he sees the world.
Minister Hamilton said many others had to play their role to ensure that the youths do not live in a society where they could not elect their leader.
I lived in such a society. You lived in such a society where we didn't have the opportunity to elect our leaders. I could not allow my children and my grandchildren.
While discussing labour issues in Guyana and the policies being put in place by the Ministry of Labour, Minister Hamilton and political analyst Freddie Kissoon agreed that 80% of the leadership representing workers are fossilized, noting that no representation is made for young people and women in leadership roles within these organizations.
Patrick Yard has been there for more than 31 years.
All right, I'm just calling something.
More than 31. Lincoln Lewis is following in the footsteps of Polydor. Polydor was more than 40 years the head of the Trade Union Council, TUC. Lincoln Lewis, who's nearing his 80s, is more than 30 years head of the Trade Union Council. Lincoln Lewis is the TUC. The TUC is Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln Lewis is Critchlow Labour College. Critchlow Labour College is Lincoln Lewis. No one has ever written a letter in the press the past 20 years and signed that letter as chairman of the Trade Union Council. It's always General Secretary of the Trade Union Council, Lincoln Lewis. Norris Witter, who's at the office of the president every week, picketing, telling us about accountability and transparency, has never spoken publicly about the Lincoln Lewis hegemony in the TUC. He can't even say a word to Lincoln Lewis, but he outside the president's office telling me we must get transparency. What about transparency in the Trade Union Council? You know, Minister, how could any public servant pay dues to a union with a man who heads the union more than 32 years now? So half of the population wasn't born when this man was head of the Public Service Union.
Minister Hamilton reflected on a time when the trade unions were vibrant and really represented rights of workers.
As I understand it, there was once in the life of this country where you had about 100 trade unions, you know, in Guyana. Today, you only have 18 on the books. So the point I'm trying to raise is how trade unions have fallen from grace and the recognition of people that they're useless, most of them. The leaders, useless. Most of them, they're treating them like their own fiefdoms, no accountability, no transparency. You know, the first year I ministered in 2021, they invited me to go speak at the TUC, made a rally during at the time. And, you know, they get up there, same Lincoln and Witter and, you know, with the government, the issue about transparency. And when I got there to speak, the same points I raised. You know, the hypocrisy that
Must
you
begin at home.
Yeah,
Charity
you,
must
yeah, you
begin
don't
at
know. I
home.
started by that. I said, you know, that here you calling on the government to be, and you are no way close to being transparent or accountable.
Young people in Guyana are not passionate about the union movement due to there being no space for growth in those organizations. There is a definite need for trade unions to improve on their performance. Since the PPPC has taken office, government has made several training opportunities available for workers. However, these opportunities were not taken up by the trade unions. Parents of students attending private schools are being assured that their children will benefit from the government's Because We Care cash grant on the stipulated dates, whether they have paid school fees or not. Education Minister Priyamanik Chan made this clear following complaints about private schools telling parents that they will not receive the cash grant until the fees are paid. The Education Minister also issued a call to those parents having any difficulties with private schooling for their children to register within the public school system. The Minister was prompted to make the statement following the circulation of audio from a teacher of a private school informing parents that while the payment of the cash grant commenced on August 2nd, 2022, those who have not paid school fees would not be able to receive the grant. Several parents then reached out to the minister seeking clarity. Residents of Melanie on the east coast of Demerara are being assured that they will not be left out of the development that is taking place across the country, as the PPPC government is inclusionary and places a high value on ensuring the livelihoods of all Guyanese is improved. Prime Minister Brigadier retired Mark Phillips, who was at the time performing duties of president, gave the assurance during the government outreach to the community on Saturday at the Melanie Community Center ground.
There are many projects and programs that we have designed and will be implemented throughout Guyana, in every community, and that's why we have the concept of one Guyana. What we're saying to you is no village, no community, no individual will be left out of our development plans for Guyana. We're coming to you in your communities to listen to you and to communicate with you as to all the development plans we have for Guyana. We know you have a number of issues. We know you want to share all your concerns with us, and that's why we're here today.
Welcome to the Melanie Darmshall Community Center ground, where currently there is a ministerial outreach to deal with issues facing this community. Residents have an opportunity to meet with their elected leaders.
Well, what we heard is something good that no one ever come in. For since we live here, 19 years now since we in Melanie. We left from Enmore and we take somebody here and we did here 19 years and nobody never come. So we're glad for the opportunity.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because these type of improvement we needed and I've never seen something like this before. So yeah, it was very thoughtful and important facts.
How important it is for the leaders, the elected leaders, to come on the ground and meet with people like you and the residents here? How important do you see that?
Yeah, it's important because you get to a face-to-face talk with them and you know, it's very good. Yeah.
Would persons in Bachelor's Adventure be experiencing the same issues with their NDCs and the local persons running these communities? Do you think that's where the problem lies?
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to local government, the problem it's there, you know. So yeah.
So I'm talking with Kurt Wilson, and Kurt has attended the ministerial outreach here at the Melanie Darmshall Community Center ground. Now, Kurt, share your thoughts on what was presented here. You had a panel of 9 ministers across sectors presenting. Share your thoughts on what you heard.
Well, I heard a lot of millions speaking about the issues that bother them and so on. And I feel that the ministers handled the questions well. The question would be, if this is the end of it, people want to know if at the end they will come back in here, do the walk around, see some of the things that are giving us problems here, including bad roads, that's a major issue, and deal with them effectively as we have to remember that at the end of the day, we're all Guyanese. And we'll be looking for the ministers to live up to what they're promising. And so far, I like what I'm seeing, and I'm very happy with the initiative of setting up this meeting here in this community.
Now, Sharmila came down to the ministerial outreach happening here at the Melanie Community Centre ground. Now, Sharmila, before we get into the issues you want to raise, tell me a bit about what you heard here today from the panel of ministers that visited.
Okay, first of all, I heard that, they're here, and the Prime Minister did mention that he's a government for all, which I like, right? And I want to acknowledge their presence here because in all the years, we've never had this, right? So we're grateful for that.
So from what we heard here today, the residents are complaining about bad representation at the NDC and the local level. What are your suggestions to make the representation better or to have more development coming to these NDCs through the local government ministry?
Okay, well, we need more involvement from the government level because, like I said earlier, we have persons that are placed there. They're just sitting there like sitting ducks, not doing anything much. You understand? And we need proactive people, that would actually come out into the community, meet with the residents. I guess they already know what are the problems, but come out and reach the people. Because, like today, I only learned about the guy there from the NEC today. That shouldn't be. You understand?
Now, Alicia, you're about to talk with the housing minister to look into your housing application. You would have applied since 2015, so you're hoping to push it forward. You're here today. Before we get into that, tell us a bit about what you heard here from the ministers in terms of their presentation.
Well, I heard that they will be looking into certain matters concerning Melanie, and they will be coming back to update certain information that they took today. Yeah.
So they spoke about training, gold scholarships and stuff like that. Do you see this as impacting the young people in Melanie?
Yes, it's a very good initiative. I think so, yeah.
It's integral and important at this time because if you look at the community in dire need of this development and these things that they asked for today. So there's the onus is upon the government of the day to represent the interests of the people. This is one of the reasons, first and foremost, they are elected as custodians of our interests and our resources. So coming out to this meeting, I'm very much overwhelmed joy. I'm just waiting now to see the actions and how they're going to deliver on these things that they said they were going to deliver.
Minister Stark spoke about gold scholarships, assisting the community, upgrading the grounds and things like that. How important are these things to youth development in your view?
They will make a great impact. It's very important because, as the saying goes, education is the only tool that could really alleviate poverty in a sense and really make a difference. So some people may confuse education for intelligence, but there's a little difference. A man could acquire intelligence without having an academic background. Intelligence is all about critical thinking and how you approach things based on your contacts, you know what I'm saying? So coming out to these meetings, a gold scholarship will be very much important given the way Guyana position at this time and the way that we plan to take off. And with all that is expected, with this big, euphoric that going on around the buzz about development on island, this youth development are come together.
And that's the bottom line.